When it comes to Magic the Gathering, there are broken cards and there are broken cards. Card we're going to talk about today is broken in a way you're not going to expect. Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles. We are here today to discuss a very cool, a very interesting card, but one that is ultimately broken. And as I just mentioned, it's broken in a way that a lot of people aren't really going to notice at first. If you're not really well versed with Magic, you may look at the card and everything's fine. But if you actually know the current rules of Magic the Gathering, this card is broken in a functional capacity. So let's take a look at the card and I'll break down for you exactly where the problem is with Gadwick. I do love his name, honestly. Gadwick, the Wizened, Gadwick, the Wizened. It's up to you on how you want to pronounce it. That's one of those words you can get away with saying however you please. So he's 3 blue and X for a legendary human wizard. When he enters the battlefield, you draw X cards. Whenever you cast a blue spell, tap target non-land permanent an opponent controls. And the flavor text says, his name is spoken only in whispers, but he hears it just the same. Now this is a fun fantasy wizard. Honestly, absolutely love Throne of Eldraine for its flavor. Gadwick is the kind of wizard tyrant who lives in a gigantic tower and blasts lightning out of people. If you actually look at the flavor text on Command Tower, it talks about approach on bended knee or leave as scattered ashes on the wind. And it's like, oh, yes, Gadwick, honestly, fuel that fantasy of being an insanely powerful wizard and making people bow to your will. So, on the surface of it, it's a fairly straightforward card. He's a 3/3. I mean, you can technically just cast him for 3 blue mana to get a 3/3 out. But you're going to want to activate that X ability, really, right? You're really going to want to pay the extra money. You're really going to want to pay the extra mana to draw yourself some cards with this guy. He functions very similarly to a Brain Geyser or like a Stroke of Genius. Now, admittedly, he only lets you draw the cards. Or does he? And the answer to that question is no. Actually, he doesn't allow you to draw those cards. At least not currently. Here's the weird thing about Gadwick. The X for spells only are set to the mana that you've spent when the spell is on the stack. And what that means is, let's say for example, you've cast him for 6 mana. You've paid 3 blue and 3 other mana for the X cost. So in your head, you're like, hey, I'm going to get to draw 3 cards when he comes out. But here's the catch. Under current Magic rules, when he enters the battlefield and says draw X cards, because he's not on the stack anymore, the X, regardless of what you paid it as, is actually considered to be 0. So no matter how much you've spent on X under current Magic rules, when he enters the battlefield, you would always draw 0 cards. Now that to me is pretty interesting. It is also interesting to note that we are going to be having upcoming rule changes when Throne of Eldraine releases. So technically, if your friends try to play with proxies of Gadwick right now, you can be a jerk and be like, nah. Current rules of Magic say when he comes out, X is 0, so you don't get to draw nothing. But once Throne of Eldraine officially releases, there will be an update in the rules that allows for Gadwick to function properly. Now, I imagine the majority of you were not aware that the card itself is functionally broken, and as a result, it wouldn't really cause problems for anybody. Also, the fact that the rules will be updated. It's just, I thought that this was a cool way to talk about how the rules are changing, and the interesting fact that right now as he exists before the rules change, his ability is non-functional. There's no way to get to draw the cards with it. I thought that was pretty cool. And in terms of the flavor of Gadwick. Oh man, I love the fact that whenever you cast a blue spell, you tap target non-land permanent opponent controls. So basically, whenever you're casting blue magic, he can just force people. It's just like, bam, it's either you can consider it like, it could be paralyzation magic, or with the way that Gadwick talks about approach on bended knee, every time he casts a blue spell, there's a little bit of energy that's siphoned off to force a nearby creature to their knees to worship Gadwick. On your knees, peasant! That's the kind of vibe that I get from Gadwick, in all honesty. And the whole idea that he can hear his name spoken anywhere. If you say his name at regular level, if you say his name like in the hush was Gadwick, he can hear it because of his magic. And that speaks to a couple of things. That speaks to Gadwick's ego. It shows what kind of an egomaniac Gadwick is, which is cool for a really powerful wizard. And also it ties into that whole it almost makes it feel like he should have black mana infused with him as well, because it makes it feel like a dark overlord ruler kind of thing, where it's like his name is only spoken in hushed whispers lest you draw his attention. But even then, he knows that it's happening. It's so cool. And the artwork is awesome too. You can see Gadwick there, and he is pictured presumably up in one of his wizard's towers. Who knows how many wizard's towers he has, right? He's standing there with the pose. He's got his hand outstretched while his spellbook is either flying over to him or hovering in front of him for him to read his spells. It's like, I don't know. It gives me like a Dungeons and Dragons vibe, hardcore. Very much fantasy flavored. The idea of an ensorcelled spellbook that will like fly over to you, and you can either hold it to study your spells, or you can just have it flying in the air there, open to whatever page that you want. The robes that he's wearing scream wizard, right? They've got all these like arcane looking symbols. He's got all this gigantic voluminous folds in terms of the sleeves of this robe. It's just got gigantic sleeves that are all fur trimmed. Like, this robe was probably pretty expensive. If you look at his shoulders, he actually has a bunch of candles. I didn't notice that. The first time I looked at him, I never noticed. He literally has a bunch of candles just up on either shoulder. The wax is dripping and melting all over him. And the candles have kind of like a spirit feel to them. What are these candles? Are these candles that measure the length of someone's life? Are these spell enhancing candles? Is this literally just an affectation that Gadwick puts on so that when the peasants and other people see him, he looks more mystical? Because Gadwick honestly comes across to me like the kind of individual who might, for his own vanity, just have magical affectations. I mean, having a spell book that flies over to you on big blue, like sparrow wings or whatever kind of wings these are, that is a pretty showy sort of thing. Gadwick feels like kind of like a giant magical braggart, where he expects people to worship him, to venerate him. He seems like the kind of individual who feels like his magical knowledge puts him above the lesser common folk. And that would also tie into the whole, whenever you cast a blue spell, you get to tap you get to tap one of your opponent's permanents there whenever you cast a non-creature spell, non-creature blue spell. It's pretty dope overall. The flavor of the card is, it feels on point. Oh, it's whenever you cast a blue spell, tap target non-land permanent. Never mind. I got the abilities kind of twisted up. But either way, you obviously get what I'm saying here. Sometimes it's hard to keep the abilities of new cards straight, especially when you've been around since the beginning of Magic and you've seen like 25,000 different Magic cards. That's an insane amount of Magic cards. They don't call me the Magic historian for nothing. But anyways, I thought it would be a fun way to talk about the rules change and obviously a character that I think is really cool too, because Gadwick really appeals to me. When I play fantasy games and stuff, I tend to go for wizards a lot because I've always found the idea of wielding magic to be far more attractive than swinging a sword or a cudgel or anything like that. Those all feel mundane. Being able to actually wield mystical energies is on a whole nother level. And I love Gadwick. I love it. I love all the affectation. I love the flying book. I love the candles on his shoulder, the big ridiculous sleeved robes trimmed with fur, covered in arcane looking symbols, the kind of stuff that would make the peasants bow down out of fear or reverence. It all works. So my friends, that covers what I wanted to talk about today. It's not the longest video because in all honesty, there's not too much depth to Gadwick in terms of him showing up in like the Throne of Eldraine story or there being more depth. It's really just his card and the flavor text off of Command Tower that really exists to give us a picture of him, but it paints enough of a picture for me to enjoy this wizard very much. So let me know your thoughts. If you enjoy what I do here, go ahead and hit the subscribe button if you want more. Hop in my Discord to make sure you don't miss anything. Any likes or comments you leave on the video also help YouTube decide that this is a good video and they'll show it to more people. So if you like what I'm doing and you want to help my channel grow, share it around, click the different things that do the things because that's a good thing. And thanks for being here, my friends. Big shout out to my patrons and channel members for supporting the work that I do. And I will see all of you, my friends, tomorrow.